Hey guys, what's going on? My name's Chris. Welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk about something a little bit different, and I'm actually really excited to talk about this as a up-and-coming author myself. I wanted to discuss one of my favorite entrepreneurs' newest book that he has coming out, Gary Vaynderchuck. If you guys are entrepreneurial or self-development based or self-awareness based or media based, you've probably heard of Gary Vaynerchuk. And I mean, he's pretty fantastic as an entrepreneur and as a human. And I think both go hand in hand to be successful in life. And he has his sixth major, I think it's 6 or 7. I know he's written a lot of books, but like his 6th major book coming out, 12 and a half, Leveraging Emotional Intelligence Necessary for Business Success. And if you've followed Gary for a while, he's been talking about emotional intelligence and self-awareness on his social medias for years. And speaking of social medias, I think he has close to like 10 million followers, like 9 or 10 million followers just on Instagram. The dude's pretty awesome. If you don't know who he is, I'd highly recommend looking into him. And today we're going to talk about his latest book, 12 and a half. So before we get started, guys, all I ask of you, smash that like button, all right? That tells YouTube to get this video out in front of other authors, other entrepreneurs, other people who appreciate knowledge as we talk about Gary's book, all right? So help Gary out, help me out, smash that like button, and consider subscribing if you like the video. Okay, guys, so first things first, let's just understand a little bit about Gary Vaynderchuck if you don't know who he is. He's actually an immigrant from Belarus. And he is considered an entrepreneur, author, and speaker and internet personality. He is the co-founder of restaurant reservation software company called Reci and Empathy Wines. He's first known for his reviews of wine back like when YouTube kind of started in the late 2000s. And I want to say he was about 30 years old back then. And he just, when he was working for his family's wine store, Discount Liquors, I believe it was called. I could be wrong. He just started like pumping out content because he saw how the internet was beginning to come around and become popular through vlogging. He has gone on to do some serious things, including he's more known for his digital marketing and social media work at this point as the chairman of VaynerChuk'S and the CEO of VaynerMedia, a subsidiary of VaynerChuk'S. Gary has also like monetized YouTube on several different channels, including his wine library, which we were just talking about, and Ask Gary Vee. Very popular series, especially amongst entrepreneurs. But really what I want to focus on today is I want to focus on the fact that he's putting out his 6th business book, okay? And I've read every one of his books prior that he's put out, except for the book on wine, all right? The one book I didn't read was Gary Vaynerchuk's 101 Wines. He put that out in 2008. I haven't read it. However, when I stumbled across him on Instagram, probably around 2014, maybe 2015, he had already put out a couple of books. And the first entrepreneurial-based, the first business-based book that I read of his was technically his 2nd, which he put out in 2009 called Crush It. Crush It is a super simple book, right? And I don't mean like what he did was simple. I mean, it's simple to read and it's simple to understand. I think it's like 145 pages. It's on the bookshelf behind me. All of his books are on the bookshelf behind me. And it gives really just a fundamental articulation of how to get started with like a side hustle or going into business for yourself. And it's a really easy read. Really, really easy read. And I highly recommend all of this stuff. But after that, he put out a book called Thank You Economy, which was another great book. That was in 2011. One of my favorites was his next, Jab, Jab, Right Hook. That book was a very fundamental way to really be able to market yourself on social media. And those skill sets that I learned from that book that was put out in 2013 and I read probably around 2015, 2016, I still use today with my online presence, and because it's applicable. But really what he tells you to do in that book is educate your audience. Educate your audience, and then if you have a product, you should introduce your product. His next book, #AskGaryVee, An Entrepreneur's Take on Leadership, Social Media, and Self-Awareness, came out in 2016. Definitely a good book, definitely a little bit of a deeper read. And he also put out the sequel to Crush It, his first business book called Crushing It. Crushing It came out in 2018. He says the subtitle is How Great Entrepreneurs Build Their Business and Influence. How you can too. The intriguing part about that book to me was Gary really put on display a lot of other high-level entrepreneurs. For instance, everybody probably knows of Andy Frisella. From what I understand, I don't know Gary and Andy personally. I just know them from, say, social media presences. They vibe and they get along, and they're both really, really good people, and they're both authors, and they're both serious entrepreneurs. I don't know numbers. I know that Andy is in the billions with his companies. Gary very well might be, and if he's not, he's close. But Gary, coming into his 6th book, I respect him very much as an entrepreneur myself for many reasons, to include one of the biggest bones I had to pick. Well, let's back up, all right? Let's back up for a second. Anyone who's put content out or books out or publications out inevitably is going to have said something that they don't agree with years down the road, okay? So using myself as a vulnerable example, first and foremost, I went to school for exercise science many years ago, 2009, right? Exercise science is a young science. And it was recently brought to my attention by one of my followers that over a decade ago, I said that fasted cardio, if you're familiar, it's when you do cardio without any food in your body, is optimal for losing fat. Now, studies have come out contradicting that, in the sense that the science more or less says neither are, quote, optimal fed or fasted cardio. It's what works best for you. So that was pointed out that I made an incorrect comment 10 plus years ago. Shifting it over to Gary, right? Gary has been on social media longer than I have. And in the late, like 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018 timeframe, Gary had this like very work, hustle tone to his comments, or to his social media, excuse me. Now, I don't look down upon that. As an entrepreneur of almost 14 years, I understand what he was saying. However, a lot of young entrepreneurs, I don't think did. And they were sacrificing their sleep. They were sacrificing their families. They were sacrificing their leisure time, thinking all I have to do is work, and this will happen. You know, put everything else aside. Now, I'm not contradicting Gary. I'm just saying one of my biggest bones that I had to pick with his message was I personally didn't think that a lot of the young entrepreneurs coming up understood what he was saying about hustle. As a business coach, as a mentor, I work with a lot of young entrepreneurs, and they come to me with these memes off Instagram primarily, where Gary's super heavy with like 9 million followers, that has that hustle mentality. And people were looking at Gary as preaching, don't sleep, just work. So the intriguing part about it is Gary picked up on that, right? Because he's super self-aware. I mean, he teaches it. And he's in his latest book, he's going to talk about emotional intelligence. He's going to talk about self-awareness. He's going to talk about, and he always talks about, being connected to your audience, fundamental that he teaches in all his books, right? So he picks up on this and he starts changing his tone, and he's like, hey guys, listen, if I said it wrong, I apologize. However, this is what I think you need to do right. And he changed his entire message about how important sleep is and how important family is, and putting it on display himself personally, talking about his sleep and the time that he spends with his family and so on and so forth. So what I'm getting at in the long and short is Gary is a super vulnerable, super empathetic, super awesome dude who's not afraid to make mistakes or to take ownership for perceived mistakes. And in his latest book, 12 and a half, leveraging the emotional intelligence necessary for business, I have a sneaking suspicion he's going to focus in on that specifically when it comes to sleep and family and the emotional intelligence needed in business and in life to be successful. So the description of the book is this, off of Amazon's website. In his 6th business book, best-selling author, entrepreneur, and investor Gary Vaynerchuk explores the 12 essential emotional skills that are integral to his life and business success, and provides today's and tomorrow's leaders with critical tools to acquire and develop these traits. The interesting part about the title is 12 and a half. So he actually goes on to market this book with his vulnerabilities of the half being where he needs improvement himself and how he offers his shortcomings, if you will. I'm not saying they are his shortcomings. However, that's how I interpret it. So we can learn from his, quote, shortcomings. He also shares what the, quote, half is. The emotional ingredient of leadership he's weakest at and makes the most effort to improve. Working through the ideas and exercises in the book, he teaches how you, too, can discover your own halves and offer insight on how to strengthen them. I greatly respect anyone, including Gary, using his shortcomings or anyone's shortcomings as an example, as a leader, to teach others how they can look in the mirror and understand their shortcomings as well. And I love how he's marketing this towards entrepreneurs to teach them in a very empathetic way, like, hey, listen, your halves are what's holding you back. Here's my half. Learn from my mistakes. And for those of you that have listened to me or followed me for years, know that that is the principle to how I teach as well. So big ups to you, Gary. Fantastic, because that's exactly how I teach too. So I'm super, super excited about this book, like super excited about this book. I really think Gary Vee is one of the best entrepreneurs in the industry and one of the best authors. He's considered top 1, like best-selling New York Times bestseller, I believe is the correct way of saying it. And I believe in him. I don't know him personally. His social media could be a front. However, as a self-aware guy who has emotional intelligence and has a good bullshit radar, I guarantee you Gary is not a bullshit artist. He's as real as it gets, and I respect him, and I'm really looking forward to his new book. If you guys want to check out his older books that I mentioned, I'm going to leave the links in the comments below so you guys can find it and go straight to Amazon. I don't get kickbacks for anything like this, and it's not about that. It's about educating the community. It's about teaching you guys about Gary or his books or what I learned from Gary. But fundamentally speaking, what I really want to know is, I want to know what you think of this video. If you think Gary's good, if you didn't know Gary, if you've read his books, if you haven't read his books, if you're excited for his new book, if you knew that his new book is going to be out in November. So drop a comment below, smash that like button if you already haven't, and if you like this video, consider subscribing. I appreciate you guys. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you soon.